Okay, I'm going to continue this little rant about black men and black women who say black men who say black women ain't shit, and black women who say the same thing about black men, or they say that black men are this, black men are that, black women are this, black women are that. Inevitably, you're telling yourself. I mean, if you're a black woman, for example, and you say, and you see this a lot, it's all over social media. Black men don't take care of their children, and you can tell there's a lot of vitriolic anger, and it's personal. You can tell. You are inevitably telling on yourself. You are mad. You are bitter. Why would any of my sisters who were blessed to have my dad as a father ever say that black men don't take care of their kids? Stop and think about that for a moment. Why would any of my kids ever say that black men don't take care of their kids? Why would any of my son's kids? My eldest son has 4 kids. He's 26. No, I'm sorry, he's 27. He just turned 27. Why would his kids ever say black men don't take care of their kids? Why would I say that? The only people that say that are people who came from a background where your black man father did not take care of you, and probably your friends' black fathers did not take care of them. Because if it was just you, you would feel that you are the exception and your father was a deadbeat, and you would look inward and you would personalize it. But when you expand it to the race, that means you come from dysfunction. Most likely you grew up in what we classify as a ghetto environment. Okay? That is a fact. You see, there are entire black communities where there is no such thing as a single parent household. I grew up in one of them. It's one of the many places I grew up where we settled down and bought a house in a black community, which was right next to the white community, because at that time they pretty much were separated, even though we all got along, and they were equal. They were equal. They were. Neither one was a ghetto. They were all middle class. And in that black community, I won't say 100%, but I'm going to say probably about 98% of all the black kids in the neighborhood lived in a house that, number one, they owned, and number two, they had a mother and a father in the house. There were a very few exceptions, and there was always a reason, and we all knew what it was. There is a thing called death. Sometimes the father dies. And we knew the story. But you didn't have a bunch of dysfunctional people running around getting pregnant by God knows who or what, spitting out babies, living on welfare, living in that community. We didn't have that. You had homeowners. You had people that were productive members of society and their families. So anyone that grew up in that community would never say that about black men. No female would. If your daddy was a loser and things were going on that the rest of us didn't know about, you might talk about him, you might feel bad about him, but you saw black men being men all around you. And if you didn't grow up in dysfunction, you would never talk like that. You had brothers that grew up to be men. You had cousins, you had relatives, and you saw people all around you that were well respected in that community and also outside of that community. Were leaders. Right across the street from me, there was a good friend of mine. Well, actually, had a few of them were good friends of mine. We all had big families, but right across the street from me, there was the father of that household was a councilman. Uh, Other good friends of mine their fathers were military officers. Other good friends of mine, they had fathers that were business owners, or they were managers in companies. We didn't have deadbeats. We did not. The men took care of their families, and the women acted like women. They acted like ladies for the most part. I'm not saying anything was perfect or anybody was perfect. I'm not saying that there were not issues. And again, there were some single parent families because there was one housing tract that was public housing. And for the most part, the people that lived in those housing tracts were from single parent families. Most of them were. But there were very few. Very few. And they all had a story. There was divorce, But most of it, a good part of it, was the fact that people die. And if my dad had died when he went over to Vietnam or any other time for any other reason, being in the military, uh, we would have had a single parent family. My mother would have been a single mom. But fortunately, that didn't happen. They're both still around. But again, the main point I want to make is that without exception, both the black men do this and the black women do the same thing. You over-aggrandize. If you're a black woman and you like white men, then go be with your white men. Nobody cares. Why are you making a big deal about it? I mean, it looks kind of pathetic. And the same with you black men. You like white women, then fine. If you married a white woman, better, great, wonderful. I hope you're happy. But I don't think you are happy. Because what's with all of the vitriol that is spewed out by both of you? It's not even about how much you love your white mate. It's about how much you hate your black counterparts of the opposite gender. That's what it is. And basically, we know, and your mates are going to find out eventually, those of you who do that you come from a dysfunctional family. You carry a dysfunctional gene probably, and you have dysfunctional latent tendencies that are going to surface at some point. The problem is you. Okay? You can rise above that. You can overcome that dysfunction. If you had a loser daddy, if you had a daddy who molested you, if you had a mother who abandoned you, or was a prostitute or drug dealer or user or whatever it is, you could overcome all of that. But your mother and your father do not exemplify decent black people. They're out there. They just weren't in your family. And unfortunately, you didn't have anything to counter the negativity, such as uncles, brothers, cousins, fathers, sisters, aunts, nieces. You didn't have anything within your whole bloodline, a lot of you, to counter the negativity. And that's why you feel the way you do today. I know it hurt. I know you don't like it. I know it makes you angry. You don't like that I'm saying it, but it's the truth. Hey, you know what? Nobody's forced you to listen to this. Stop the video. I say what I mean what I say. You know it's the truth. You know it's the truth. That's why you're mad. If it wasn't the truth, it wouldn't bother you. You know that a lot of us can't relate to what you're talking about. You know that. So why do you pretend as though all black people grow up in your dysfunction when you know we don't? Maybe as far as you can see to the north, the east, the south, and the west, there's nothing but poverty and dysfunction. But that's your experience. That's you. That's where you came from. And you can rise above that and still be a decent person and a decent catch for a mate, but not if you don't get over that. You will never be worthy of anybody because you're overcompensating and you're ignoring. You're tainted. You're jaded. You're damaged goods. You're ignoring your past. And you're trying to vilify an entire race based upon your personal experience, your personal life experience, which is unique and peculiar to you. The rest of us, a lot of us, we can't even relate to it. We can try. Can't relate to it. Just can't. I was about to stop this video. I thought that I had said enough, but I've got to add just a little bit more truth. Here's the thing. If you are a black woman, for example, and your father was successful, your father was well respected by your mother, and if your mother was a wife rather than a baby mother, and if your daddy was a husband rather than just a baby daddy, and if you came from that background, and if you were in a community that successful people prefer to live in, not some dysfunctional community, because if you care about your family, you want them to have the best opportunities. You want your kids to go to the best schools, to live in the best neighborhoods that are well maintained and around decent people and decent neighbors. If you came from a productive environment and background, and you obviously didn't, but if you did, you would not have this vitriol against black men. It wouldn't be possible. There would be too many examples that are close to you of positive black men, and you would be looking for them. And if you preferred white men, that would still be fine, but it wouldn't be because you think black men are all a certain way. That's negative, because you would not have that life experience. It's obvious